Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by alligators and crocodiles. They lead such exciting lives, always off to somewhere. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Honey Nugs. Start your day the sweetest way with Honey Nugs. Welcome, everyone, to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we're filmmakers. We make things and we watch movies to discuss maybe how they made that thing, talk about the writing and the filmmaking aspects and the acting, and who knows, cover whatever makes sense given the story that we're talking about. And part of the filmmaking process is showing it to other people. And last week I drove out to a festival and had my first screening, and it was fun, and I learned a few things. It's always fun to watch your film in an audience if you're excited about that kind of thing, because especially if it's like a comedy where you can get a laugh or two, that's very satisfying, of course. And for me, the things that I learned, I would say I learned maybe three things. The first is they didn't know I was coming. And what's interesting about that is I did tell them in a response, like whenever they first accepted my film, I was like, hey, thank you. Really excited to meet everyone in Arizona and see you soon, whatever. And then I get there and they're like, yeah, we had no idea. And I was like, I communicated that, but the thing, and that wasn't my lesson. My lesson was communicate until you hear back. I think I can be such a timid person that I don't like to impose myself. And the reality is I need to be my number one advocate. And so if they don't get back to me within whatever, a couple days, reach out again until they tell me something, acknowledge the fact that I'm going to be there, because they rushed, getting me a badge and making sure I was included on the marquee and all those kinds of things. And which those things I don't technically care about. I'm not someone who's in it for seeing my name on the marquee. I'm there for all the other reasons. But, you also want to make sure you're included in the mixers and if they have any other events going on, if there's a panel, and I kept waiting to hear something on those things, and I never did. And it might be because I didn't make crystal clear sure that they knew I was coming. So that was a lesson for me, and this was a good first festival for me to attend and start learning some of these basic things. The number two thing I learned was I need more reps of getting up and talking about my work. That was not my we do this every week on our podcast. But it's pretty safe, even though we know we're talking to, a few hundred people. We also are just talking to each other, bro. I'm really just talking to you, and even though I'm thinking about our audience every time I speak, I know at the same time, I don't have the pressure of looking, 30 to 100 to 400 people in the eye. It's different thing. And then I'm not talking about my own work. It's a different element. And so thankfully my producer surprised me. He showed up. He didn't tell me he was coming. He just kind of popped up. And so he joined me on stage during the Q&A session after all the screenings. And he was smooth. He was silky smooth. He's very rehearsed. He's gotten his reps in because he does a lot of pitch meetings, and he's constantly working with clients where he has to be in the room with, 200 of them, that kind of thing. And so he's gotten all the nerves out, and he's also just very extroverted and gregarious person, which doesn't hurt. And so it was really, now I wasn't a wreck up there. It wasn't like, I tripped and, cut my face on the mic or anything. It was just, I know I could be smoother, and I know I had some nervousness that was clearly projecting onto the audience. And so getting more reps in, if I think back to our first podcast episode, there were nerves there too. And by the end of that first episode, we were good, but we also knew that we were finding our way. And then for the next 75 episodes, it was the same thing for me every time. I started each episode a little nervous, and then, eventually now we started this episode and I have zero anxiety or nervousness, right? We're pretty confident in what we're doing. We've gotten our reps in. And so I just need to do that more somehow or some way. It's easier said than done than like, I just need to get in more festivals. Sure, buddy. But be that as it may, like you need to get those reps in, and it's a different animal. And so looking for those opportunities probably be good for me. And then the last thing we were talking beforehand, like, is some of the projects that, I saw while I was out there, maybe not the strongest on a visual level, on a performance level, even the sound maybe not be that great. I don't know. And the writing wasn't necessarily tack sharp. And it's funny because what else is left? You say all those things, right? So you're saying you're not seeing anything great and you're not hearing anything great. And what's your lesson? The lesson was a great story can still shine through. Like if you just tell a really good story with a really good idea, it can still make it through all that noise. And that was really impressive because I'm still thinking about that story several days later. Despite all these flaws, I got pulled in and got a really nice punch in the stomach. It's a wonderful thing to think about. Like we hear that all the time, story's king. And then you see a lot of Hollywood films that don't really take their stories very seriously. They sell out for one way or another. Like it's about the effects. And it's like, well, I thought story is king. And so at the heart of it, story really is still king. And if you honor that, I think it'll show up in the audience. Yeah. What do you think about all that, man?
Yeah, man. Well, I'm really glad that you got some reps in at the festival, because you're going to have more.
Yeah.
And you got standing up in front of people talking about your work and yourself. I know is not the easiest thing for you, but there's ways to do it where you don't feel like you're bragging, or you don't feel like you're trying to convince people of what the story you were trying to tell. So I'm glad you got those reps in. That's awesome. I'm proud of you, man, for sending it in and getting into this festival. It's freaking amazing. I wish I could have been there. It was so cool that Ricky was there. Proud of you for that. And then, about the story, I think that audiences are more forgiving, in short stories and stuff, and in production value, or perceived production value, if the story is there. And that's what I think you're probably talking about, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this doesn't look the best, but the story is interesting, so I'm going to keep watching. Okay, this doesn't sound the best, but oh man, she just did this really unique thing that I didn't expect. Okay, I'm going to keep watching. It's the questions that I think the audience is asking throughout the story or throughout the picture, what keeps them watching. And then in the end, what they associate to that film, right? So yes, maybe it didn't look the best or it didn't sound the best, but the story, there's a reason we're talking about this. The story is interesting, and it's some things happened that I didn't expect, or some things happened that maybe I hoped would have happened and they did, right? Because it's a little bit off the cuff and it's not the norm, right? Uh-huh. And I think that's pretty powerful. It's a powerful statement too, because it also means that there is no one way to make a film. It's not it's not, oh, well, I need to have really good sound for this to be good.
Right.
And so I have to spend the money to do that. Or, oh, I really need it to look like this in order for it to be good. Or no. What do you have? Break it down to the bare essential, which is story, and motivation and action and do you have that? Okay. All right. And by action, I don't mean like fight scenes. I mean, like, what are they doing? Mm-hmm. What are your characters doing, or what's happening? So yeah, I totally agree. And I don't think that we've really addressed that on this podcast. We've addressed, story is king for sure, but in the context of everything else not being right.
Yeah, correct. That's a first for us.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I'm pretty sure I got into another festival. I'm waiting to hear exactly, like they gave us an award or something. I don't know. It's very murky exactly what happened. I showed it to Ricky. He was like, "Oh, we got an award," and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know." And there's all these weird stipulations. So TBD on what happens next, but it seems like we're trajecting in the right path,
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about this until you just said it, I don't think.
Yeah, it was the morning of the festival. Like so much happened that day that I forgot to tell you. So yeah, I'll let you see what I saw and you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, it sounds like y'all got in, but it also sounds like maybe you didn't. It's very confusing what the actual meaning is. But anyway, yeah, so excited for, whatever comes next. We'll see how it goes.
Awesome.
Just keep trucking along, man.
Absolutely, dude. Sounds great.
Nice. So, what are we covering today?
Today, we are covering The Amateur, which is out in theaters at the time of this recording. So if you haven't seen it, please pause this episode and go to your theater. Go watch a movie at a theater. It'll help everyone in the world. Everyone in the world will benefit from your $11 ticket. No, please go and watch this in the theater or wherever you can. Because we're going to spoil all the things.
Yep, we'll dive pretty heavy into story and writing. We'll talk about how world building impacts the audience experience. We'll also talk about setting up your character arcs and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. When his supervisors at the CIA refuse to take action after his wife is killed in a London terrorist attack, a decoder takes matters into his own hands. Directed by James Hawes. Screenplay by Ken Nolan and Gary Spinelli. It's based on the novel by Robert Littell. Cinematography by Martin Ruhe. Featuring Rami Malek as Charlie Heller. Rachel Brosnahan as Sarah. Jon Bernthal as the Bear. Holt McAllany. Yep. Holt McAllany as Director Moore. Michael Stuhlbarg as Schiller. Julianne Nicholson as Director O'Brien. And Laurence Fishburne as Henderson.
Nice. And no soundbite today. I just don't feel like fighting another DMCA takedown notice. So
yeah, okay, good.
We'll take a break for my mental health day. So yeah, what do you think, man? This is ambitious. It's stepping into this big world of, spy, espionage, thrillers, especially we've been covering a lot lately. And I'm curious, where does it fit in the spectrum of good, bad, somewhere in between? How was your experience?
It was a little vanilla for me. I always love seeing Rami Malek on the screen. I think he's really great at what he does. I think he's great in this film. I think Jon Bernthal is great every time he's on screen. He plays the same character almost in everything he does. He's just like a badass in everything he does. But anyway, I think they could only afford a little bit of Jon Bernthal. That's the vibe I got. Because he is an A-list actor, and you only see him like twice in the film, right? You see him when he meets him, or 3 times, I guess, but you see him when he meets him once in the lunchroom, and then at the end, or later on, where he's like warning him, and then he just goes away. And it's just, why would you have Jon Bernthal in the film, for literally 4 minutes? And if you have got him, it's because you can't afford him. That's why. And I don't know that that's the case. It's just kind of what it felt. Laurence Fishburne is incredible. I have no words. I mean, I'm watching him in his fight scene. It's Matrix.
Crushing it.
I mean, it is literal Matrix style,
it's fast,
badassery.
Bro. God.
Yeah, it's fast. It's aggressive. It's convincing as shit. I mean, yeah. Anyway, he was the highlight of the film for me.
Agreed.
I mean, in the entire film, to be honest.
Yep.
there were a few qualms that I had, but for the most part, I just love seeing him in this film, and I loved the fight scene that he had, and it just took me back to 2000, and he looks incredible. He just also, he's an older guy, like he's gotta be in his maybe 70s. I don't know. He had to be at least mid 30s when he did Matrix.
63.
63. Okay. So yeah, he was, yeah. Okay, cool.
In 20 years, are you going to be doing what Fishburne can do?
I mean, I can't do it now. So yeah, no, he did fantastic. Yeah, so the good things are Rami Malek, Jon Bernthal, Laurence Fishburne. Those are great. Yeah, I think the story is interesting, right? It's kind of a little bit like Taken, and this guy just takes matters into his own hands, I mean, Taken's a bad example, but it's
sure.
The law won't do what they're supposed to do, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to vigilante it, whatever. And so it's interesting that he's doing it, but he is not the kind of guy who would normally do this. So I do like that they show him being really stressed out. Like, it's not easy for him, when he blackmails his director, and then he goes outside, he goes into his car and throws up, right? Because he was just so nervous. That whole process of saying, this is what we're going to do, and I've got a kill switch and all this stuff. And then the editing is a little weird for that scene in particular. I feel like they're in the room, he goes out to his car and throws up. We go back to the room, and then they start talking about what to do about him. It made no sense to me, time-wise. No sense. It should have been, he leaves the room, they talk, he goes out and throws up, they cut back to them continue talk, or something like that. That took me out of the movie. I had to make a conscious effort to get back into the story, because the timeline of the things that happened didn't make any sense to me. That, and then things like, why would Henderson, or not Henderson, why would Charlie be given the gun at the end by the bad guy? That made no sense at all to me. None at all. I mean, it was obviously loaded. He could have killed him, and he chose not to. Fine, I get it. But why is he such a gracious bad guy, like villain, that he's going to load a gun and hand it to the guy who killed all of his men to get to him? Zero sense at all. It ruined the whole movie for me, to be honest.
And then on top of that, once he discovers this guy has sold him out to Finland or whatever, lets him go. Like, he just handle your busy work. It doesn't matter. You're going away or whatever. Yeah, I agree.
And
with
he gets
everything.
he gets onto the boat because they knock him out and bring him onto the boat in the middle of the ocean. Like, it was like happenstance.
Yeah.
There were things that I liked, like him planting the bomb when he was trying to get away from Henderson in the night, or in the bar. He couldn't get out, and so he was smart about a lot of things. And I thought that was cool, but that's expected. It's expected that because he's not a badass, like, Mission Impossible films, he needs to be smart. And while I saw a lot of that, it was expected. So it wasn't like, oh yay, it was just kind of expected. So the editing, and who is his director? Not the director of the CIA, but his director was
Holt.
that?
Yeah, there's Holt, McAllany, director Moore,
Holt.
And then there's the intelligence director that I think is overseeing all of the national intelligence, which is Julianne Nicholson.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know
I know.
his name is Holt. I don't know that guy. I just know his face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mindhunter.
I've seen him in everything.
Yeah.
I don't like him. I'm not a fan of his
Really?
acting. I just don't. He's the same in everything he does. And it's for like 30 years, he's been the same at everything he does. And it's not that he's bad. It's just that I know what I'm getting. Every time I see you, I know what I'm getting. You're going to either be the bad guy or you're going to be the thing that's standing in the way of the good guy. You know, like one of the two. And that's what you get with him. So I wasn't crazy about that. And then also the director O'Brien, Julianne Nicholson, she's great. But she didn't have a big enough role in going after director Moore. She has that meeting with him in the lunch, and she's suspecting something, and I know that she sends out the other team to go, monitor Henderson, I think it was, and so they needed that story, but she needs to go after him, after director Moore, way harder. Like she needs to be a bigger part of this story, and she wasn't. And then also there were moments of, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm shitting on the movie, but it kind of needs it, just because these are holes in the story. Like this is not like, oh, I wish it would have shot better or edited better, even though that was a note. There were moments where Charlie is standing in places where he should be seen, staring at people, and he's not. And I don't know. And the whole scene where I feel like there were massive holes in the story. There were moments of the editing that were confusing and took me out of the story. I feel like I could see where they were cutting corners in dollars, in budget. And just adding another name to the movie, adding Jon Bernthal to the movie, to sell tickets, but he's not even part of like the main. I mean, I don't know if he's on the poster. Maybe he is, or he's in the trailer. I'm not sure. But if you're going to have Jon Bernthal in the movie, have him in the movie. Like when I first saw him, I thought, oh, he's going to be a great part of the story. And then you don't see him at all. So anyway, there's other things, but I'll stop there. It was fun at the theater, but I'm okay with not seeing it again. And I feel like it fell flat for me.
So metaphorically speaking, the amateur handed you the handgun and you pulled the trigger.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor.
Yeah. So I agree with everything you're saying. Like, I think it's a fantastic cast. Like, there's no one in here I don't like. You and I differ on Holt McAllany, just because I mean, you're right. I don't disagree that you know what you're going to get with him, and he does it well. I still love seeing him on screen personally. Like, I love him in Mindhunter. I loved him in the Iron Claw, and here I kind of like him. That has less to do with him than I think the writing, but overall, this is a fantastic cast. Michael Stuhlbarg, like, you kidding me? And he's kind of underutilized to a large degree too, just because like you only really see him at the end, which is fine. That is here nor there really, but great cast, but so many problems in the story. Rachel Brosnahan, like I'm so glad she's in a movie. She's become kind of a TV legend at this point, and I'm wanting to see her break away from that. I'd love to see her do more movies. But God, I was just struggling. Look, my first viewing wasn't a great viewing because mentally I was gone. I went and saw this after a 12-hour drive. I woke up the next day after this long drive and finished writing my a feature script. I gave myself a deadline, and I finished writing the script. And then I had the screening for the festival later that night. And I was like, well, in between, I got plenty of time. I'll go watch this movie. And I sit down, and mentally, I am gone. Like, I'm already exhausted, like hungover from driving. I'm still thinking about my story, like, oh, you need to edit that. Oh, you need to change that. And I've already sent it out to 3 people. And now I'm thinking about, oh, they're going to read. That's fine. It's fine. This is still just broad strokes. And so I'm trying to watch this movie, even though I'm anywhere but this movie. And so I watched it a second time. But even in that first viewing, I was able to see around curves that were just glaringly obvious. Like I really like the idea of the woman in the cage, which is a weird setup of an allergy test and their boxing grin. Okay, whatever. I'll go with it because we're in a movie. And I like the idea that he uses pollen to try to kill her or whatever. Fine. But the very second that door opens and they start fighting, I'm like, oh, she's going to die in the street getting hit by a car. I knew absolutely 45 seconds before that happened exactly what was going to happen. Wow, really? Yeah, it was just the most obvious because I knew she was frantic and I knew he wasn't going to pull the trigger. And the only way to get her to die without him making a decision was in traffic. And so I literally I should have pulled out a stopwatch to see how long before, it happens. And I just waited and it happened. I was like, okay, yeah, exactly. And so this movie was kind of a lot of that, of just like obvious decisions and unnecessary elements. I don't know. The second viewing, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in and I'm really just here now. Like I've gotten all the stuff out of my system. I'm going to sit and watch. And it was just because toward halfway through the movie, I stopped. Like mentally, I couldn't have told you why we are doing what we're doing. So the second viewing really was like a first viewing in all the ways that matter. And watching it still did not land one single punch on me, like emotionally. I didn't care about so much happening. And so I'll dive into what I saw, and I think it will illuminate a lot of the stuff that Todd is talking about. So first, let's talk about world building. You are beholden to your world building, right? This is what sets the expectations for your audience. This is why John Wick can kill 500 armored guys with his pinky and we cheer him on. That's the world they built that we sign up for. If a random henchman walked up behind John Wick and took him out, we would not be happy or understand how that could happen, even though it's literally realistic in real life. But because they built an unrealistic world, we have unrealistic expectations that are in alignment with what they set up. The amateur built a world based on very real ideas, grounded ideas, terrorism, whistleblowers, data harvesting, encryption, difficulty of taking a life, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's all these elements are very grounded and rooted in our world as we know it exists. And so therefore we, the audience, bring very real grounded expectations that you have to respect. And they didn't. This was their biggest problem, I think. Their second biggest problem I'll get to in a second. But little things like the guy in the pool decides to make a swim for the long way. He goes the long way.
What the?
What? Okay. Charlie sets off an explosion in a public nightclub, and this is our good guy. That's discombobulating for me. Like we're rooting for this guy, and he's blowing stuff up in this public place. Like this is the reason. Like we covered Mission Impossible, and in the trailer, right, he's setting off a bomb effectively in a restaurant, but that's a different world. That works in that world because he's a different kind of character. And, we never have realistic expectations of Mission Impossible. That's not why we're there. Here we have more realistic expectations. And so now that wasn't his biggest offense. But the other confusing element that I really still don't understand, maybe you can explain this in a way that I can comprehend, which is the CIA or Director O'Brien, is she trying to kill Hendo? Like, that was really confusing that Henderson gets into this fight with another CIA agent And it's also very confusing exactly what Henderson is trying to do in the first place. Like, he's being sent to take out Charlie, but he's not really doing it. And so he's never really communicating what his intentions are. And we get to the end of the film and he's basically like, with us, he's a good guy. I don't know what his deal is. And it's always very murky, as well as a CIA or intelligence director trying to take out one of its own operatives. Like, this is all very strange and discombobulating for me. At least the implication is that they're trying to take him out. That's its own kind of wavy, unclear, murky thing. Okay.
Yeah, if Henderson is such a badass, he can definitely kill him. But
yes.
He's fighting the other agent who, I don't have an explanation for that, by the way.
Okay, damn. So, okay, I will say there is one line of dialogue that I have a strong love-hate relationship with, which is when that conversation you're talking about, when he starts blackmailing Director Moore and his buddy, and Director Moore says, son, bugging a CIA officer is treason. And I hate this line so much because I hate it, because that's literally not true. That's not what treason is. It might be illegal, but that is not treason.
It's funny you said that, because I was thinking that too. I was like, is that treason? Okay, anyway, keep going.
But also love it because that's exactly the kind of thing a CIA director would say. So it's very fitting. But I wish someone in the room, i.e. Charlie, had pointed out, because that's the thing Charlie should know. Like, he's a very sharp guy. He's a textbook guy. He should know that's not true. That's not what treason is, And I wish someone had advocated for our civil liberties there. But anyway, we'll get back to that. And then, so getting back to your number one big issue, which is also my number one big issue, which is our big bad Schiller handing his gun to Charlie, who doesn't pull the trigger. Like, this is all just like, what is going on? And then the comment that Charlie makes is he wanted to balance the scales to let him feel what Sarah did. What are you talking about? And it's that moment where he kind of sees a look in his eye and he's like, that's it. There it is. That's really awful writing. No part of this setup is believable by anyone. And you have completely checked out your audience because you violated all principles of a grounded, realistic world as we know it. Not good. But what's really great, almost, in this scene is when Schiller is criticizing Charlie. And it's almost so good. Because what he says is, you do all these elaborate murders from a distance because it's hard to take a life up close. And so you can tell yourself there's no blood on your hands. This is so good. This is a commentary about drone killings and bombings that they are murder. This is something our culture and our government really needs to hear. And I'll try to remember to come back to that in a little bit. And then he goes on, unfortunately, to say, but you're not a real killer. It's like, but we're establishing that is real killing. Why are you undercutting it by saying that's not real killing? Like, it's so bafflingly mixed in its messaging. And it frustrates me in so many ways as a writer, as an American citizen, like, pick it. And it sucks. In the beginning, Charlie couldn't pull the trigger on Hendo because he emotionally couldn't handle it. But at the end, he now can take a life, but is choosing to not do it. So you would think they're creating a very strong ethical boundary here. And yet, as we'll see, they're not. We'll come back to that. And so let's talk about the problem with Charlie. Because I think he's very poorly set up. To your point, and this should be restated, Rami Malek is so good. Like, he is absolutely maximizing the minimalism that they're giving him. Like, it's so good. He's amazing. But it's such a poorly set up character that they're not giving him a lot to build on for us to buy into. Because it opens right on him working on an airplane, which we don't understand the context of until the end of the film. Right? That's when he hangs out with the bear, Jon Bernthal, who's telling him like, you're too afraid to fly your own airplane. It's like, that's great that we're just now discovering why he has an airplane, because he never flies because he's afraid of risk. But we find that out after we've come to know Charlie as a killer. Like, it's so ineffective in creating any meaningful tension. And I think they're trying to circle back to it to give us some kind of dramatic tension for that final sequence of him holding the gun. But it's just not structured in a way that is effective, because we never bought into that really in the first place. The closest we get is that moment with Henderson, but that's such a wonky scene as well that you just don't really, it doesn't make sense. Why would he pull the trigger on another CIA agent who's there to train him? Like, that's not a true test, because there's really nothing at stake for him to not pull that trigger. Like, that's such a nonsensical method of revealing how he's afraid to do things. Like, what? And then he's a murderer at best, or he's just hoping that the gun isn't loaded. That's a lose-lose situation. There's no reason for him to pull that trigger.
Exactly.
Okay. So also in the opening, Sarah asks him to go to London with her, right? Just once, take a risk, she's trying to get him. And so they're kind of flashing in neon Vegas style lights, right? That Charlie is severely risk averse, but this is emotionally sterile, right? We don't feel his risk aversion. It's simply told to us twice, effectively, right? He won't go to London, and then his wife challenges him verbally. There's no visceral choices being made that can resonate with us on an emotional level. There's nothing for us to really understand that he is risk averse. Now, if you really wanted to use that airplane, have him get in and try to take off, and then at the last minute stop and, semi-crash the plane, and he's fucking terrified. Like, there's some emotional, like, oh yeah, this guy's, he's almost going to get himself killed because of how, like, scared he is of doing anything. Or something. Like, there's something you could have done there. And so anyway, he wouldn't go to London at the beginning of the film, and now by the end, right, he's traveling all over the world covertly. And the problem is, without a good setup and some friction, these are simply things that happen. But they provide no thrills to the audience, and no tension, nothing that, makes us believe that this is significant on any level, right? His biggest move, and this is such a failure of writing, I think, his biggest move in the entire movie, I think, was escaping a CIA training facility under the watch of a badass Henderson. And we don't experience any of that. It's simply, Charlie is now awesome. He's vanished. He's off the radar. He's off the map or whatever. Like, we never experienced his first big moment. You want to talk about throwing up and dealing with some anxiety. That's a big moment for him. And they just pull the old open the door and he's gone card. All right. We never really earn that progression from zero to hero. And that was the moment to do that, I think. And so the other big problem in this script is that there is absolutely no emotional impact from his wife's death. Like, that's a big moment for Charlie. It's the whole impetus for the film. And yet I could not have cared less, even if it is Rachel Brosnahan. Like, she's amazing, and yet I was like, okay, I guess she's dead. So I don't know, maybe shoot that whole scene, that whole sequence, right? Let us feel her terror, right? Let us see her head get shot. Yes. Something like we're there for this kind of stuff. Like, show it to us, give us something to viscerally impact us, and get on Charlie's side. And I think also, like, their whole opening is just lovey-dovey nonsense. There's nothing realistic to buy into there. That doesn't feel like a real marriage. It feels like a cartoon where they're trying to present love without any other elements that actually are present in love. And so what I would have loved is to maybe let them have a fight. Let them have a real argument over something real. And then maybe they can make up on the phone, right? Give them some depth is all I'm saying. They have none. He chases her car as she's leaving, and that's kind of this added layer of how much they love each other, but it rings hollow because it feels written. And that's just, it doesn't feel like real love.
I'm so glad you're explaining this, because so often when I see a movie for the first time, mostly like newer films, I feel like there are these things where it just feels flat or like not real. And it's hard for me to put my finger on why. And I think you painting the picture of what we expected, what most people expect, not most people, just like people in general, viewer expects from a relationship of this caliber is a certain this. And when we didn't get this, it like really adds clarity to how I felt in those scenes and in that moment. And yes, I do feel like we were robbed of the stress that she went through. I know this whole thing is from the perspective, I guess, it's not even from the perspective of our guy of Charlie. Yeah. It's because they kind of like try to make it that, but it's, we do cut away. We cut away to Henderson, not with Charlie. We cut away with Director Moore, not with Charlie. So it's not from his perspective. So because it's not from his perspective, we should have seen that. We should have felt her terror. We should have, and now we understand Charlie's heartbreak because we are part of it. Like we have that heartbreak because like, God, that would be a terrible thing to go through, but how, wonderful to be able to feel that, but we didn't get that. You're right.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but my first viewing, I kind of kept expecting her to show up alive at the end at some point along the way.
Me too.
Right?
Me too. I think because we didn't get
Never saw
that,
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
We didn't even, it's not that we needed to see her head get shot, but we could hear it.
Yeah.
Because like when he's scrubbing through the footage watching and he stops right before, did it happen?
Great point, because we can hear it and just watch his reaction. We don't need to see the blood come out, but we can watch his reaction to it.
Yes.
And that's heartbreaking.
And honestly, if we just had that,
yeah, true,
we wouldn't necessarily need, it would still be beneficial for the story, but we wouldn't necessarily need to have been there with her.
Yeah.
We could be there with him going through it, but we never see her die.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. A lot of missed opportunity there, I think, is what we're saying. And so Sarah also taken because she tried to save someone else. This whole element doesn't feel very logical or sensical. It just has no resonance. It's like they took her. Why? They saw her, I don't know. It didn't really make geographical sense within the context of the scene. I just didn't buy into it. It felt like they're just saying things to make us care even more about Sarah, because it's there to bolster our emotional connection to her and therefore to Charlie. But the execution wasn't there. You're welcome. And so, I don't know. I think overall, though, stepping back and looking at the 500-foot view of this thing, I think there is a worthy discussion. And that's the heartbreak of this movie for me, is I know, I see it. This is a worthy discussion about our intelligence community's culpability in global affairs and being held accountable for their actions. But ultimately, it's undercut with the very flawed protagonist who himself runs his own illegal murder operation without any accountability. Like, you're completely disconnected from your own theme. And so you have at the end, right, he goes to visit her grave and we find out that she died on September 12th, right, the day after 9/11. And so I think they're saying, this is the day our beloved soul died as a country and we're living in its aftermath. Perhaps it's a metaphor for our Afghanistan and Iraq invasions, right? Citizen spying, blowback for past covert operations, and the need for accountability. But the problem with all that would be the new head of intelligence looks a whole lot like the old one. Like there's nothing Director O'Brien isn't really doing that isn't the same similar garbage that Director Moore did. And so it just feels very hollow and like you're not making an actual case for your philosophy. I don't know. I getting through the end of it, I was just like, I wish y'all had done some other decisions here, because it's a good message. We need it. We need to think about these things as a country. And I love the idea that even if nothing else, if Director Moore gets arrested and gets held accountable, that's wonderful. I cannot imagine if we started doing those things as a country, I don't know, the world might, have a little more respect for us, and we might have a little more respect for our own government, which is got to be getting at an all-time low. Like, I don't know how much lower we can get than we've experienced over the last, 25 years, but it's getting up there. And so anyway, I don't know. I could go on about that for a while, but I will cease. I'm working on it, doing the internal work. And so, yeah, what do you make of all that, man?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do understand that this can be a reference to how we act in the world. I find it hard, though. I don't know. I feel like if they're trying to send that message, like, you need to really nail down that you're trying to send that message. And if I can go through the movie, and see holes in you delivering that message, then that's kind of a problem, So, I understand that, but there's a lot of problems in the story. And because of that, and, I think it's pretty poignant that what you said earlier about, having even a short film, can look bad or sound bad, but if the story is great, then that keeps you engaged. And then things take you out, it's, when things take you out because of the sound, that's one thing, but when they take you out because the storyline breaks you, that's a whole different level. And I feel like there's so many moments in this movie where that happens. I'm not going to try to belabor it. I'm glad it got made. And I think, it was really wonderful to see Laurence Fishburne be a badass again. And I think Rami Malek is great in playing this kind of like smart, nerdy guy. I think with a better script, he could do so much more, but I don't want to say any more bad things about it. I think that we've kind of beat it up enough.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I saw it. It gave me an excuse to go to the theater, and anything that can be made, it goes to theater and not straight to streaming. I want to go, like I want to be there. I want to pay the ticket. I want to, support theaters, local theaters. So is a good excuse, to pay the ticket and go.
Yeah. Well said. Okay. Well, I think that's all I got. Then what, any final thoughts, or do you want to go straight to recos?
No, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. Nice. I don't have anything else. So I'm going to recommend, I just started watching this, and it's pretty crazy. I'm going to recommend White Lotus. I don't think that we've covered that. Have we covered that?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to say about it. I think you should just go watch it. It's streaming, I think, on HBO. Mm-hmm. And was it, how many seasons is it? Is it
3?
3?
Yeah.
3 seasons now? Yeah. So I'm going to recommend White Lotus.
Nice. Well done. I'm going to recommend a film called The Report. If you're interested in like all these ideas about, government surveillance and accountability and, what we're really doing, I think The Report is a really good kind of intro to that. It's about a guy, this is based on, real events, an investigator that is doing an investigation for the U.S. Senate into the CIA's detention and interrogation programs, which is, immoral and illegal, and also ineffective. And so it dives into torture, basically, and it's a really worthy film. I think it, I'm I'm hit or miss on Adam Driver, to be honest. In this film, he really worked for me. And so highly recommend The Report. And I think it's like Redacted or maybe the Torture Report, but it's really just called The Report. And so, yeah, check that out. And stay tuned for, what are we doing? Stay tuned for next week. We're going to take a look at Sinners, the new Ryan Coogler film. Very excited. Anytime that guy's got something new coming out, I am just stoked. And so very excited about that. And I'll link a thing from Kodak. Shot this on film, and you can watch it in like a dozen different formats. He's really thought through like a fun audience experience in a number of ways. And so I'll link that. And it's like, I don't know, a 5 or 10 minute walkthrough of film and a little bit of film history and just all the formats that Sinners is available in. And so stay tuned for that. And then after that, I think we're going to dive into The Road, Cormac McCarthy. So keep an eye out for that. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a note, leave us a review. And if there's something you want us to talk about or to cover, let us know. And if you want to comment on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/theamateur.
And our quote of the day is from Neal Stephenson. What idea havers don't understand is that it's in the making of all the micro decisions that the actual work of creation takes place, and that without it, the idea might as well not exist. So well said. So well said. I think the first time I heard something like this was, and I think I brought this up at least to you, whether on the podcast or not, but my friend Jet was at with his young son at a museum, and there was a piece of art on the wall, and it was just black. The whole canvas was black. There were different little textures in there, but his son was like, I could do that. And Jet said, yeah, but you didn't. And I think that's exactly what this is saying. It's like, you can have an idea all day, but unless you create it, unless you, like this, make all the little decisions and do the actual work, then it doesn't really matter. The graveyard is the richest place on earth. So, yeah. Wow. Beautiful quote.
Yeah, I love it just because there's this idea, that permeates. I love what you said. That's so on the money. And there's also, imagine though, if another version of that had happened where his son was talking to that artist before he'd made it. And he said, I have a really cool idea. What about a painting that's all black? And that guy went and spent 25 hours making this. The son wants to be like, oh, I did that. That was my idea. And it's like, no, no, you had an idea and you had no idea how to execute it. And there's this problem that people think just because that their main contribution is having an idea, and it's not. Your idea is practically worthless if you don't know what to do with it. What about a world where we don't have construction materials? Instead, we are all buildings and houses are created through bugs, and we've programmed and engineered bugs who can scaffold and build buildings for us, and we live in them. It's like, cool idea, man. Where's the story? Make that. And then if I were to sit and turn this weird setup into an actual story, someone wants to come by and be like, yeah, that was my idea. And it's like, I just spent 4 months creating this, and you think you did this. Is such a fallacious misallocation of intelligence. I can't even put a good word to it. It's a lie. It's not true. Your idea was absolutely minimal in the creation of this end product. And people get this foolish notion that they are making major contributions when in reality, you're doing almost nothing at all. You can start an idea, but if you can't actually flesh it out, it's the exact same thing as not having the idea at all. You're fooling yourself. You are not the inventor, you are not the creator, unless you actually invent and create. Yeah.
Great point. I had a lot of fun, man. This was great. Make sure to join us next week. We're going to cover Sinners, and subscribe to us, review wherever you get your podcast. All of that helps a lot. Share it with your friends. And if there's a film that you'd like to see us talk about or pick apart, let me know. Let us know. And maybe one day we'll talk about it. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.
How it should have ended.
Yes, exactly. He just blows his head off. Perfect.
Got it.